Tarnjeet Purewal, thank you
Absolutely
for
brilliant.
coming on to the Grind Diaries, mate. I appreciate your time.
It's a pleasure, mate. Thanks very much for inviting me on. And I saw, having seen what you've kind of already started doing with, one of our good friends,
Yep.
Andrew, and just the idea of it, I was massively keen to get involved. So
Decent.
I'm very
Thanks, man.
grateful for you having me on.
No, I appreciate that. Thank you. So for those of you who don't know, Tarnj and I went to school together, along with Andrew that was on last episode. So I'm sure some stories will come out about that.
Sure.
So it's quite a funny story how we were always friendly at school, but I don't think we were ever like close mates.
Yeah.
And then, you kind of went off and we did uni and whatever else. And
Yes.
just really didn't get, didn't stay in touch at all. And then came back. I remember bumping into you in Asda and you just lost a ton of weight.
Yeah.
I remember thinking, what?
Yeah.
Where's he gone?
Yeah.
But over the course of like adulthood, and it's strange how you've now moved away from where we grew up.
Yes.
But we're kind of we're kind of better mates than we ever were, which
I
is
think
really
that's
sad.
right. Yeah, I mean, it's just funny how that's life, isn't it? Like one of the things I was thinking about just over the last few days, knowing that I was coming on to do this podcast with you, is it's just one of the mad things is that there is such a close connection with people that have been in your life for such a long period of time, and I think that is quite a rare thing. Certainly, I spend my days speaking to people day in, day out and finding out about people and what drives them and what makes them tick and getting underneath them as people. And I must admit, like, I do feel like quite very privileged, the fact that we have got friendships that have been so long lasting, from the school days. And even though, like life is, we know how busy life gets, you can drift in and out of each other's lives. You get busy, focus on the things that are important to you that you need to focus on. But what's kind of remained a big steadfast for our group, I would say, is the connection between us all. And actually, I think that is a really beautiful thing and very rare thing, actually.
Yeah, I agree.
I completely understand what you're saying, because I think at school we're in different tutor groups.
Yep.
Didn't really hang around but too much in the same circles, but obviously we would still be connected through our mutual kind of groups of people that we would hang around with. And then coming back from university, actually, for me, it was a different phase of my life, and it was about connecting with people perhaps I didn't have that kind of same level of friendship with. And it was natural. It wasn't sort of it wasn't a plan at all to do that. But Chris Brown, who I know is one of your very best friends, and I still regard Chris as one of my very best friends, even though we won't see and speak to each other as much as we used to. But he's a massive connector, I would say, for us, just because I know how much I love Chris, and spent my time knocking about with him, particularly when I came back from uni and stuff. So, and the ability to kind of get into groups of friends that you didn't really have the opportunity to build that friendship with at a younger level, and having that opportunity to do that at a later stage of your life has been amazing, and we've created some good memories along the way as well.
We?
Yeah, I think so.
I think what's amazing for me though is that, and it's the same with everyone in our group, to be fair, we cannot see or speak to each other for 6 months.
Yeah.
But then it's just always the same.
Yeah.
It's like there's no different. Like we bump into each other.
Absolutely.
Straight away. There's no awkwardness. There's no like standoffishness. It's just like straight in.
No.
How you doing? And it doesn't matter what circumstances either. You know, it's like,
I think there is something, like I say, I keep using the word special, but there is something quite special about our group of friends, because we have got that ability, and it's very natural to be able to just, again, if I'm back in Southampton and I see you, if I saw you in a supermarket, saw you in Asda, I'd be absolutely over the moon to see you, and it'd be a great opportunity, because I know I don't get that opportunity on a day-to-day basis. I live in London, my life's here, my work's here. So for me, I absolutely love it each time I see you or anyone else in our group that I haven't spoken to. I was back home over Christmas and I bumped into Mike Douglas in Waitrose in Chandler's Ford. And I haven't seen him for, probably best part of a couple of years, I'd say, maybe less than that. But it was so good to see him. And I could have easily have just dropped what I was doing then, in the rush before Christmas, do the shopping, get back to the kids. Yeah. But if I'd had the time, I would have said, let's go for a beer.
Yeah.
Let's just properly sit down and catch up, because haven't seen you for such a long time. I want to kind of know what's been going on and just have the chance to have a laugh together and sit down and just get to kind of see where we are, you know, in life and just enjoy being friends.
It's great as well. And what the other thing I love is I love how every single person in that friendship group has gone on to do amazing things, like in some way, shape or form.
Yeah.
We've all, you know, gone on to do things that we would never have called back being 16-year-old little shits at school.
Yeah, quite.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I find that quite fascinating as well.
It is. And there, again, I'm going to use it again. It's quite special, right? If you look at our kind of very close, immediate group of friends, you know, some of those will be closer than others. But in that group, we've got a whole bunch of successful entrepreneurial individuals.
Yeah.
And there must be something, you know, it's not just something in the water there. It's just the way that we have connected as people, the way we are, I think, within ourselves, the kind of teaching that we got maybe at the early level, what we learned from each other.
Yeah.
But what that tells me is because, you know, we went to a state school that wasn't necessarily one of the best schools in the country either. No. You know, it was probably at the opposite end of that. Mm-hmm. But you know, so it's not like we've all been schooled in a certain way and we've been taught at a very early level to kind of, this is success and you guys, you know, you're going to have that drive and that ambition, you're going to succeed. And in fact, it's probably the opposite. But everyone has kind of found a certain path and you look around and we've got friends that are, you know, some of the most successful people that I know.
Yeah, same. And
it's 100%. Amazing. And they're mutual friends. Yep. You know, we look across and they've got their own businesses. They might be working in companies and done incredibly well. You know, I'll take someone like yourself as well. Like, you know, your journey and your pathway in, obviously in the car on the way over here, we're just talking about, you know, the kind of the role that you have and how much you care and how much you're driven by it. And that for me is an amazing thing. You know, I just think like we're lucky. We can take inspiration from each other quite easily. Yeah. And I think that's quite a hard thing to find. Again, not knocking anyone else, and I'm sure there's plenty of people that can recount on their own friendship groups and stories, but I just feel like we have got something we're very fortunate, you know, to be in the position that we're in, I think.
Yeah, I agree. It's mad. I think it's part of it's competition. I think you've got an inspiration as well. Yeah. You know, when I think back to when we were young, when really all I cared about was going out and getting drunk and having a good time. Yeah. And you got people like Mark Winteridge. Yeah. Who from as early as I can remember was just like, I'm going to be a millionaire. Yeah. You know, whatever it was he was saying. Yeah. But he was just always so ambitious. Yeah. And whilst at the time, you know, my mind was thinking, I just want to have a good time with mates. Yes. I think that still planted the seed. Yeah. It still planted the seed and, you know, you kind of took inspiration from it and then you kind of look around and you go, oh man, he's doing it. And then you go, oh, you know, Tarnjeet's doing it and Mark, you know, and all these other people that are kind of going through these different journeys. Yeah. And it's just inspiring. And I think what it does is it makes it real. Yes. You know, it's because you know that person. Yeah, you know that person. Yeah. And I think that's probably played a big part in the way that we as a friendship group have kind of developed and moved in, you know, in our own ways.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think it, you know, actually when you think about it, it shouldn't come as too much of a surprise because when you're that close to each other and you're talking to each other day in, day out, or, you know, you really like each other and your friendships and you're hanging about and you're knocking about, going out, getting drunk, getting pissed and having a good time. You know, there are times actually that you do have, you may not necessarily have the deepest of conversations in those times of going out and getting drunk, but there are other times where you are sat around a table and just chatting to each other. Yeah. And, you know, that kind of competition between you, particularly when you're younger and you're at school, because there is that, you know, that competitive kind of edge that people take. And, you know, you want to be seen as someone who is going to be successful, is the best at, you know, running cross country, in the football team, in the basketball team. And fortunately for me, I was never in any of those groups. But you look at Mark and, you know, Mark's pretty much my best friend and a brother. You know, I treat him and I think of him as my brother. Yeah. I love him to bits. And yeah, he you know, he's kind of always had that. But again, even with Mark, and I wasn't as close to Mark at school, but when he came back from his traveling and I came back from university, there must have been something between us, because we were sort of drawn to each other. And, you know, from then on, it was like, you know, there's no sort of looking back. You know, for me, I can't think of my life without him having been a part of it and in it.
Yeah.
Which I think, you know, is an amazing thing. Again, just to have the opportunity to have someone that's not just your family, you know, someone that you're born with.
Yeah.
You know, to be that significant in your life, I think, you know, is a pretty incredible thing.
Yes.
And it's not just Mark, it's the group,
Yeah.
as we keep going back to and stuff. So, like, you know, the fact that we've all kind of ended up in a position where we've kind of had ambition and we're making our own ways in life and in business and in work. There is something, you know, there's an osmosis to that when you're rubbing off on each other.
Yeah.
And it does happen because you learn from each other.
Yeah, I agree. I
You
totally agree.
pick things from each other. You try to work things out in your own mind, but it is something that does, I think, it naturally just inspires you to think, well, actually, I can see that person doing that. God, I want to be there. How can I get there as well?
It's almost subconscious, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it is. I think there is a strong subconscious element to it. And, you know, there's a lot of that inner monologue that I'm sure that we all go through. You know, I definitely do it on a day-to-day basis. And it starts from the moment I literally wake up in the morning. But I think that seeing your friendship group in particular succeed is an amazing thing.
Yeah, I agree.
And actually having that own sort of inner ambition to want to be there with them or creating your own success, I think is really powerful. And actually, you know, we may not tell each other that you're doing this for me, but actually we are all doing it for each other.
Yeah.
You know, and that's it's a very nice natural thing to be a part of, because, you know, it's not forced. You know, actually it's just being around each other and wanting to see each other do well. And ultimately there's a lot of love between all of us.
Yeah.
And I think that drives us all on in our own ways and stuff. And it's going to take us, hopefully, you know, very far in our lives, as it already is.
Yeah, hopefully. I think, you know, we talk about competition. You know, I think it's probably more inspiration than competition. Like, there's always been that kind of, like, you know, you want to be up there, you want to be like,
Yeah.
you know, you want to be having these conversations and you want to be involved in these conversations.
Yes.
But I think it's definitely like, I look at my friendship group as an inspiration over, you know, over being competitive with them now. Like, I think we've developed into that era now where, you know, I go for walks quite often with Mark Powell.
Yeah.
And I mean, that guy, honestly, he's such an inspiration.
Yeah.
Like, you know, we don't talk about him being an inspiration, but just listening to him talking about his plans and how he's done stuff is incredible. I've been trying to get him on here for a while, but he's not having it at the moment. But hopefully,
I'm sure he'll come on at some
hopefully
stage.
I'll twist his arm at some point.
He definitely should come on. I mean, Mark is, you know, again, inspirational guy. You know what he's achieving, and him and Luke, you know, and their business, you know, and what they've managed to achieve it's incredible. And just like I say, you know, kind of sometimes you sit around, you know, we're both close with, you're particularly close with Mark and see him very often. And Mark is, you know, I guess part of the group that I probably later in life spend most of my time. If I'm not spending it with my wife and children and my mum and dad and my family, I'm spending it with those guys.
Yeah.
And yeah, you know, it is incredible, and the kind of different ideas that he's had, and he's been very laser focused, and in a lot of ways you kind of look at that and you think, wow, you know, you're doing something which is pretty amazing.
Yeah.
I wish I had it in me to be able to kind of do, you know, what you're capable of doing and what you have actually done. It's not just about potential, it's actually about doing it.
Focus.
And
it's that
focus.
He's so focused.
Very focused. And credit to him, you know, and I've lacked, you know, focus, you know, and I still can lack focus. You know, I can be very easily distracted, and, you know, I do like having a good time, and, you know, but part of that also is healthy, right? You know, to sit around a table with Mark, Luke, Winter, you and the other guys and absolutely rip each other to bits.
Yeah.
And, you know, and you need that. You need that
definitely.
grounding. And actually, when we're sat around the room, we're just friends.
Yeah.
Wherever we are behind in our own lives, in the business and the success that we enjoy, you're going to quickly get taken down, feet back on the ground when you're sitting around the table having a few beers and, you know, getting absolutely rinsed.
100%. I think that's important as well, though.
Yeah.
You know, I think me and Andy touched on it last week, where, it is, you know, it's such an important element to really understand who you are and where you've come from.
Yeah.
And, you know, that actually ends up contributing to how successful you are.
Yeah.
So
I completely agree with that. Because I think, you know, if we're all sitting around kind of patting each other on the back and, you know, telling each other how great, you know, each other are, I mean, there's a bit of a falseness to that in my view, you know, even though we truly believe it and genuinely we believe it. And I think the fact is what, again, is so real and natural and quite raw about it is we all know underneath that we, you know, we care about each other. We want each other to do well. We are proud of each other. You know, as guys, as men, I guess you don't necessarily tell each other that as often as maybe you could. Me personally, I'm always happy to say things that perhaps other people may not, just because that's just my character, my personality, and I'd rather tell someone than not, you know, and sit there and sort of think it without, you know, actually telling someone, look, you know, you're doing amazingly.
Yeah.
Like, this is
powerful
incredible
as well, isn't it? It's powerful to hear that from people. So
because if you think about what you want in life and what kind of motivates you and drives you, if your starting point is that, it's like, you know, yeah, absolutely. When someone tells me I've done a great job for them, or you're doing really well, it gives me such a boost. You know, it really gives me an energy boost. It makes me feel loved. It makes me feel like, God, the things I am doing actually have, you know, it's validating, right? As much you've got to have self-belief and you've got to drive yourself forward. Everybody wants a bit of love and a bit of attention and, you know, to be told that they're doing well.
Yeah.
You know, and that comes from the very beginning of life, you know, when you're a child and, you know, you want to impress not just your peers, but your mum and dad. You know, you want to be the person that, you know, they can look at and go, well, you know, sitting there and being in a family event and your mum and dad talking nicely about you. That is a lovely feeling. Like, you do feel like, wow, this is great. You know, it's my mum and dad who I love to bits that are talking nicely about me, rather than going, he's a little shit.
Yeah.
And actually, you know, and I'm sure, you know, they might be saying that behind closed doors, but, you know, I'm a great believer of that. You know, at the end of the day, you know, everyone's got their fallacies, everyone's got their, you know, weaknesses, you know, everyone's got their moments of not being the best, you know, and not being the best human as well. And, you know, what you do behind closed doors, what you do behind closed doors. But when you're going out into the world, for me, it is about promotion, actually. You know, it is about trying to bring people along with you, actually. And if you see that, and especially with your friends, I think you have got a duty to lift them up, you know, because if you really care, you know, it's something that you should naturally want to do. Yeah,
I think that's the powerful piece, though, isn't it? Like, as friends, we know each other's flaws. We know the bits that others don't.
Yeah,
and I think that's what makes it more real, I guess.
Yeah, it does, and it's hard because, like, you know, as you know, there's pride attached to, you know, the person. You know, there's ego, there's pride. There's a lot of factors that get in the way.
Yeah. And,
you know, we all don't want to be, you know, everyone's got fear no matter what they say, in my view. You know, you don't want to be embarrassed. You don't want to be humiliated. You don't want to feel like, you know, you are being, you know, targeted or being made to feel embarrassed or humiliated. And I feel like, for me personally, I've always been quite attuned to that because of my upbringing and the sort of life journey, as it would be. So to put someone in a position where they're feeling like they're less of a person than what you are or the group of people that you're in, I really don't like it.
No.
And I don't want to do it.
No.
You know, actually, it kind of is actually emotionally upsetting because you think, you know, that's not fair. You know, that's whoever that person is, whatever life they're leading, whatever position that they're in, you know, that's you know, you got to kind of take them as they are. And if you can help them along to get out of a shit situation, or give them advice where they are struggling. I think, you know, again, if you care about someone, you're going to want to do it.
Yeah. And who knows, like, you know, people, this will lead quite nicely onto the first question I'm going to ask you, but people don't necessarily deem success in the same way that you or I do. You know, like, you know, as an example, you're going to get some people that would want success to be, you know, living in a penthouse in Mayfair and driving a Lamborghini.
Yeah.
Whereas I think for you and I, it's more about the more kind of material aspects of life, like family, and that the bits that aren't necessarily driven by what you've got. It's more about what you've built, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it does make sense. And look, don't get me wrong, I'll take a penthouse in Mayfair with a Lamborghini any day of the week, absolutely. But I think that's right. It is a personal thing, what matters to you and what success is. And I think you just mentioned that's kind of a, first kind of key question from your side. And I think that's one of the things that I've learned as I've got older, and certainly, hitting our 40s, it does allow you to reflect much more on, the life that you've had so far and the life that you want to have going forward. And I think that at different points of your life, success can mean very different things. When you're at school, success is about being seen to be someone who's kind of, popular, influential, on the team, on the school teams, someone that makes people laugh. Obviously, you've had no, challenges around that because you've always brought people in because you can make, that's a powerful thing, humour. Like, that is, if you look at it, actually, that's probably one of the most powerful things you can have in your armoury is to be the ability to make someone laugh, smile, feel good. But then, it can be academic success, and it comes to that, what grades am I going to get? And I know that matters to some people more than it does to others.
I definitely went down the humour route there. It's my academically.
But, I don't think any of us sat at school going, oh my God, what grades am I going to get? We never talked about that.
No, we didn't really, did we? Not until right at the end.
Yeah, when you had to.
It became a competition thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, of course. When it got down to it and you start doing your mocks and into GCSEs, we may not have talked about it with each other, but, obviously we've got pressure rightly from our parents to go to school and make sure you come out with decent enough grades to go into the next phase of your life, whether that's going to be straight into work or to college, etc. So success, my own version of success or my own view of success has changed massively.
What's it now?
Now really my what I view as success now is about having a happy and healthy family and a relationship with my family is probably my priority in terms of success. That is what I'm completely driven by. And that's what matters the most to me, but at the same time, I've still got a lot of ambition and I see success of what I can do with my business, that I started 6 years ago and what I want to do going forward. And success for me on that has also changed, like ultimately, I think success in that way is leaving a mark on the industry that I'm in. That's what I want to. That's what I want to achieve.
What does that mean? Like, what do you mean by leaving a mark on the industry?
So what that means, I think, is having the opportunity on a scale to have had an impact on the industry that I'm in. So I'm in legal recruitment and search. So I work with qualified lawyers and for the last 7 or 8 years, mainly worked with senior equity partners, in probably the largest law firms in the world. Nice. And so for me, I'm playing with the big boys in the city and I've got a chance to impact people's careers as well as their lives. In fact, the two go hand in hand. Yeah. And so for me, in 10 years' time, what I will measure as a mark of success for me is like, what business have I built? How impactful has it been on my clients? And, how much have I helped my clients grow in their own trajectories? What part have I played in people's lives? And that means, how much have I helped people through their own career journeys, whether that's to help them move or help them advance up in the business that they're in. And it's not necessarily about the accolades and being award-winning and everything else. Actually, I think the tangible stuff is knowing, I will know by the time I get to that point what impact I've had on the people that I've worked with and the clients that I've worked with. And they will know as well. Yeah. So that is what I think is success. And
I guess it's all linked as well, right? Because, the way that you're trying to shape your business is kind of shapes your strategy, right? Because you've got a bit of a target, you want to make an imprint on the industry. Yeah. That happens. Yeah. Obviously you're rewarded for that. Yes. Which then enables you to impact your family. Yeah. and improve their quality of life.
Absolutely.
Which ultimately leads to you know, your first port of success being enhanced as well.
Absolutely. Again, it's all linked. You know, I think if like I said, my priority is my family. You know, that's my everything. You know, that's all I live and work for. You know, being totally honest. And so I know that it's my responsibility. You know, as the person that's got to look after them to be successful. You know, it's not just about want, it's about need. You know, and I think that's what drives me on. Like, ultimately, you know, I've got to make sure that they get what they want.
Yeah.
You know, and, you know, you can't always give them exactly what they want. But, you know, that for me in the morning, that's my driver to get up and think, what can I do today that hopefully has an impact on, yes, creating a successful business and making money, because of course you need that. And I want to do that. You know, I definitely want it. But I know by doing that, it means that I can then take my family on a nice holiday this year, you know, hopefully a couple, you know, give Ethan, you know, what he wants, you know, the next football kit that he wants or the new bike that he wants, and the same with Aria, you know, just chance to give her what she's looking for, and she always wants something. So, you know, but that for me is really, it drives me so much, because, you know, the fear I've got is that I don't want to be in a position where I can't give them what they want, you know, and that, you know, that fear about not being able to do that also plays, you know, a part in my sort of ambition to succeed.
Yeah.
You know, I do not want to be in a position that perhaps, you know, we probably have gone through in our lives, you know, growing up, where you have to sometimes, well, quite often, not get what you want and not even have a chance of getting what you want, you know, and you accept it because that's life and that's what it is. But, you know, it's kind of a bit cliched, but, you know, you kind of go through life, you know, your own journey, what you've been through, and you will try your absolute utmost to make sure that your family, if you're lucky enough to have a family and have children of your own, get a better life than what you had. Yeah. You know, and it is a cliched thing, but I think it's very true. It's what our parents have done for us. You know, and we take it forward and you pay it forward and you do it for your own family. But again, you don't need to be motivated to do that. You know, that should be something that is just within you to do that.
It's crazy though, isn't it, how family changes everything.
Absolutely.
Like, you know, and you'll see this later on. Your kids are a bit younger. 8.
Yeah, so Ethan's 9.5.
9.5.
And Aria turns 4 on Monday.
Yeah. Oh wow. Yeah. Happy birthday, Aria, for Monday.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah, obviously my kids are a bit older.
Yes.
So it's really mad how your kind of motivation changes. You're still like, I'm in a position now, so I've gone through the bit that you've gone through of, I need to provide for these kids, and I want to be able to give them an amazing start with their life. Like, I want to, you know, show them what's right and what's wrong, but also show them what's available if you put the work in.
Absolutely.
You know, and so you're the provider, right?
Yes.
And then as they get older and they start, you know, developing a real personality and a real idea of what they want to do with their life, it becomes, the pressure changes from provider to I need to like inspire. You know, I need to really kind of inspire these humans now, because it's so easy for them. And the whole reason I started this podcast is it's so easy for them to just to sit on social media, looking at some guy waving a camera in front of his face and driving a Bugatti. Yeah. And they're like, that's easy. Yeah. But what they don't understand is they don't understand the work and the grind that goes behind it. Absolutely. And I think that's what inspired me to do this. But, you know, going back to the conversation, it's just mad how you, as a parent, your role kind of changes as they get older, you know. I mean, for me, Riley's 17 now. Yeah, and he's amazing. Clever. Like, he's not, you know, he's nothing like I was at his age. Yeah, nothing. Bless him. But I think, you know, that's because that's kind of the way that me and Cara have directed him. We don't really want him to go through the things that I went through as a 17-year-old.
Yeah.
You know, I could have made something of my life a lot earlier.
Yeah.
If I'd have really kind of put my mind to it. I feel like I wasted a lot of years as a youngster. And so that, you know, we've kind of, you know, guided, you know, our children to try and not make those same mistakes. And I think, you know, it's incredible how, you know, how your role changes.
Yeah.
You know, because now the pressure for me is to set an example. You know, whereas before it's to provide.
Yeah.
Can you see what I mean? And
I can.
It's a real shift. So the action's now on me, because they're now watching. I feel like, you know, they're watching my every move now.
Yeah, I expect that, you know, and I completely can relate to that. And I think, you know, listening to you talk about, you know, your children, and yeah, like you became a parent, you know, a decent period of time before I did. Mm-hmm. So you've definitely had more experience than me. And I mean, look, you know, I've seen some of the stuff that I know I can see how proud you are of your kids. You know, that shines through. That shines through from just talking to you anyway on a day-to-day basis when we do get a chance to catch up and stuff. But just seeing, like, you know, Riley, like, you know, his success at football, which obviously we'd all, you know, growing up with being very passionate about footy, as we all are. Yeah. Like, a lot of us are in our group. It's an incredible thing. And, like, you know, we're all with you in that front, because it's like, it's an amazing thing to see, should I say. And, to see Riley doing so well at football, and seeing some of our other group of friends having kids that are doing incredible stuff at footy, like Mez's, you know, boy, and it's an amazing thing. And actually, I end up talking about that quite often to people that, you know, don't know anything about us, and because you anecdotally do talk about the people that you know really well and that you really like, or your friends that you care about and stuff, and you want to show it off a little bit. Actually, it's a really nice thing to be able to do. But yeah, I think you're right. You know, that being a parent does change a hell of a lot. And look, you know, but I'm like you, Ant, you know, in the sense that I look back at my life and I know that I've wasted years, you know, and I know that. And I think actually, if we're honest with ourselves, most people would probably feel the same way, you know, in one shape or form or the other. So, you know, one thing I've tried to do is not be too hard on myself on that. Yeah. But I am incredibly hard on myself, saying that that's very much a contradiction. But you can't help it. I think when you really care, and when you really want to do well, and you will look back at your life and go, do you know what? I wish I had done this sooner. You know, I wish I did not basically piss about during that period of my life where I could have been even further ahead than I am now. And, you know, I could have made that turn instead of making this turn. And it's going to happen. Yeah. Because, you know, at the moment, you live in the moment. You know, you can't predict the future. You can shape it by the habits you put into your life, the direction, the decisions that you make. But look, we're only human. We're always going to continue to make decisions that aren't necessarily the best ones. So again, I think actually if you are tough on yourself about that, that's not a bad thing. No, I agree. And to be fair, everybody that I've spoken to so far on this podcast has said the same thing. Yeah. I wish I started earlier. Yeah. You know, and I think that, you know, that's always been a part, you know, a part of my life that I don't regret, because I had some great times as a youngster. But, you know, having kids was what changed everything for me. I didn't care about my career until I had kids, and I just wish that I had the same motivation. You know, 7 years. You know, in 7 years from leaving school to having children. Yeah. 7 or 8 years. I wish I had the same motivation that I did once the kids were born, you know, because that, to me, it feels like 8 years of no progress. And I mean, of course we progress, of course we've learned stuff in that time, but it's quite mad how we all seem to say the same thing about just wishing you could start earlier. I think that's, and to be honest, you know, I'd say to you definitely shouldn't be too hard on yourself, because we all go through exactly the same thing. And I think one of the things that I'm trying to get myself out of this thinking, because I think it's almost imprinted in you from a young age that there are phases and years of your life where it matters to achieve certain things. So, you know, we look at our age, for example, and, you know, we've turned 40 and that's seen as a milestone. It is a milestone, right? But, you know, and I guess, you know, if you're marking your own progress in your career and your life, and 40s, you know, maybe, you know, touch wood, is more than it's, you know, it's not just a halfway point and we can go on for a long time, but you can't help. I think society sort of almost creates these milestones, these kind of junctures of your life that you've got to sit there and assess and go, have I achieved what I'm going to achieve by this age? If I haven't, that's a failure. If I have, I'm successful.
Yeah.
And actually that can't be right, because you know, I don't read many sort of self-help books and sales books. I just don't, you know, if I'm going to read, I rather just get lost in something that's not real. Ultimately, that's just, you know, it's a release for me, and I enjoy it much more. But what I'd say is that from what I have read and from what I see, you know, some of the most successful people in the world have got things very wrong a lot of times in their lives. And actually some of the most successful people in the world didn't actually start seeing success until well past 40 years old.
Yeah, it's true.
You know,
it's really true.
And I think, you know, you can't help but measure yourself. You know, we talked about our group of friends and you know, the people that we're lucky to have as friends and cool friends. And some of these guys like Mark Powell and Mark Wintridge and others that have been so successful. It's incredible to see. But yeah, you can sometimes sort of sit there and get a little bit lost thinking, God, wish I was there, and, you know, why am I not there? But actually, you know, you can't always look back. You know, you have to let go of that. I think, you know, looking forward and looking at what the journey is ahead and what you can achieve is actually much more important, because ultimately that's what you can control.
Yeah, I agree.
You know, you can't worry about what you can't control. In the past, whatever's happened, you can't control that anymore.
No, I think you just got to learn from it, haven't you? You've just got to take a lesson. Sometimes you've got to take a lesson. Sometimes it's a, you know, it's a good experience. Sometimes it's a bad experience. Talking about, you know, people that have continuously failed, I think that's like key, because it's the one thing that's always stopped me from doing the things that I wanted to do, was just not believing that it would work, not believing that it would be a success, and being frightened of failing, ultimately, and that's what prevents me. So I had a chat with my lifestyle coach on the first episode that we did, and so I've got this real fear of failure, right? So it stopped me doing a lot of things in my life, but obviously, you know, that's something that I can learn from and I can move on from. When I was having the conversation with him, he was like, and I said to him, well, one thing that really stands out about you is that you just do stuff. Like, there seems to be zero fear of failure. You just go, I want to do this, and then the next thing you're doing it. And he said to me, he said, it's exactly the opposite. He said, the reason that I do it is because I'm so scared of failing. And that is what pushes me on. And I was just like, that's a completely different way to look at stuff. And look, it's kind of what I was saying earlier on when I was saying to you about why I sort of get up in the morning and have to go, because I'm so scared by the alternative that I feel like I've got to do it. Even at sometimes I sort of think, I don't want to do it. And I think it's really difficult. Like, I think everyone, you know, if they're honest with themselves or honest with other people as well about it, have all got fear of failure. You know, it's a natural human thing. Like, you know, there are others that you know, can cope with it better. And some have got, on the face of it, you know, this supreme confidence to try things. But what's really, you know, when you actually break it down, you have these kind of conversations that we're having right now. What's really raw and real about it is that actually, you know, on a human level, we all kind of experience quite similar things. I was listening to the other day, Thierry Henry was on the Stephen Bartlett Diary of a CEO podcast, and I was immediately, obviously being a huge Arsenal fan, wanted to give that a listen. And I would urge you to give it a listen if you haven't, and because it's really interesting and very interesting what Thierry Henry says about his life, and like one of the most successful footballers in the world, you know, one of the best, in my mind, you know, best striker to have played in the Premier League, you know, best striker on earth at one point. Incredible footballer, so successful, and had this kind of arrogance. Yeah, he did.
You know, the supreme confidence. Like, he just glided, and it was like nothing could faze him. But listen to that podcast and listen to what he says about his life.
I did hear a snippet from it.
Yeah.
And it was really like he was going deep into about the mental struggle that he had, and I was like,
day to day.
Wow.
Playing when he was banging in 40, 45 goals, winning titles, winning player accolades. He was going through this. He talks about his relationship with his father. That's shaped a huge part of his life, and actually where he was basically depressed. What's all the success? So again, when we talk about success, you look at him, one of the most successful football players to have played in our generation. Behind the scenes, he's going through absolutely the opposite.
Yeah, he's probably thinking he's not success.
He doesn't believe it in himself.
It's mad.
And you quite often hear that when you sad as it is, when people do sort of get to a certain point in their lives, and when we kind of all have probably got people that we kind of, not in our lives, but that we kind of take inspiration from, whether it be sports people or actors or comedians and people that we really love to spend our time, observing, watching in a movie, etc. Someone like Robin Williams, who was one of my favourite actors. Yeah. Just I loved everything he did. I wanted to be like him. He was so amazing. And then, he sadly, the way that he, his life ended, and then what came out about him and, what he had been going through and everything else. So ultimately, there is a mask, I think, that we all put on, on a day-to-day basis. Yeah,
and I think, it's that perception, isn't it? People look at you and think, from the outside, this guy's, doing great and I want to be like this guy. Yeah. Whereas actually, we don't really know what's going on. We don't really know what's going on in their mind.
You don't. And unless someone kind of is prepared to let you in, then you won't never know. And you can't expect that because, that's relationship building. That's, it's got to be reciprocal. And you've got to have someone's real trust for them to want to share something that is deeply personal to them. And that doesn't come easy.
No.
And I'm lucky in my job, I get an opportunity to actually really get underneath people and understand what is going on in their lives and play the role of, on the face of it, you might call me a recruiter or a headhunter, but actually I'm probably more of a life coach and a counsellor and a best friend and a confidant to a lot of people that I work with. But I enjoy that responsibility because it gives me an opportunity to try to help someone get through a phase of their life that I know may be difficult, or they're looking to change things or improve things. And I get to play a small part in being able to help them do that. But to get into that position where they're prepared to let you in that deeply, you've got to win their trust and, get them to kind of feel like actually this is someone that is invested in me and not just seeing me as a pile of money that they're going to make, by moving them to another firm. Which is really interesting.
Yeah, so I'm really interested to obviously go back to, how you ended up to where you are today, because I know that you kind of went to uni and you studied law at university.
Yeah.
And you kind of went down that route of lawyer. I think you were
solicitor,
a lawyer at one point.
That's right. Yeah.
So then it'd be really interesting to know how you were, how your upbringing kind of shaped you into that area.
Yeah.
And then what made you move from, being a solicitor into this successful recruiting business that you started.
Yeah. So, I mean, so I guess going back, right?
Way back.
I mean, look, from going back to childhood, I mean, where it all begins for all of us, I obviously, I call Southampton home, but actually I wasn't born in Southampton. I was born in the Midlands. I was born in Derby.
Really?
Yeah, which is, again, most people don't know that, right? And we've been friends, 30 plus years?
Yeah.
And again, it's, it's one of these things that you wouldn't know, right? Because, the time that we started beginning to know each other was when I was, we were about 7, 8, 9 years old. And that was when school had started. And I'd been in Southampton from 5 years old. But I was born in Derby and spent 5 years of my life beginning 5 years of my life there amongst all my family. So that's where my mum was born, and where her brothers, my uncles, and all of my cousins basically live, and a lot of them still live there. So that is probably that's what I would also call home, because it's been a very significant part of my life, throughout. But we moved, so we kind of, not that I know all of this, but I, hear this from my mum and dad and from my family and everything else. But my mum and dad had an arranged marriage. So my dad was born in India and lived in a small village in India for 22, 23 years of his life, and then married my mum for an arranged marriage, which is very typical in our culture, in our religion. I'm Sikh. And then I think I was born a couple of years later after they got married, and we lived in a place called Normanton in Derby, which is pretty much a shithole.
Is it?
And it's rough. It was about where we lived. We lived about 2 streets away from the old Derby County football stadium, the baseball ground.
Yeah, I've been there.
The old stadium, which has a lot of history, European wins, Brian Clough. And so that area isn't the nicest of areas, but actually I remember it so fondly. For me, there's so many good memories there, and actually I was sort of begging to go back there when we moved to Southampton at every opportunity.
Really?
Because it was where my family were, it was where my cousins were, it was where my closest, my brothers and sisters, we treated each other as, and it was like I was completely removed from that. And the reason why we moved is because mum and dad both got, I think dad first, and then mum got a job at the Ford transplant in Swaveley. So which was one of the biggest in the country, and I think in Europe at one point. So that's the reason why we moved. And also we had family on my dad's side. So my aunt, my dad's sister, was in Southampton, and his aunts and uncles were also in Southampton. So we had a family connection here as well. So it kind of made sense from a family perspective. But for me, I, obviously as a 5-year-old, my brother was born 5 weeks before we moved as well. So, there's a 4.5 year difference between ours. And, we moved to Bitton. So I lived in a road called Oak Tree Road, which was near the triangle in Bitton Park. So not exactly, we didn't really move up in terms of quality of area. But again, we lived, the house was bigger than what we had before, which was nice. Not that I don't think we really appreciated the fact that, it was a bigger house. It had a bigger garden. We had a swing set in there, which was, great for us. And that was seen as a massive thing growing up. And we were there for a couple of years before we moved again to Chandler's Ford, to Highfield Road. And obviously that's where my connection with your last guest on the podcast, Cat Andrew McCaskill, also started. So we lived at 7 Highfield Road, and he was up at, I want to say 17. I've probably got that wrong, but literally 4 or 5 doors down the road. Lived next door to somebody else that we both know, but and was a good friend, Gary Fremantle.
Yeah.
So he lived next door to Gary, became good friends with him. Richard Jurd used to live don't know whether in the same street, but around the corner. So and that, I guess, is where, friendship with a lot of people that I'm friends with now began. And most of my probably, closest friends, sort of began at that point. But, growing up, went to, Friern, infants, juniors, then went into Toynbee. And we grew up in a household where mum and dad were just constantly working. So me and my brother were, a large part of us, the way that we were raised was by our grandma, my grandmother, who my dad brought over from India. So sadly, my dad, he was very close to my granddad growing up. My granddad passed away when I was 3.
Right.
And actually I hadn't recognised what a tragic set of circumstances it was until later in life. But after my dad got married to my mum, he moved to the UK, left obviously his family, his mum and dad, my grandma and granddad behind, and my uncle and everything else. And the first time we went back to India to go see them was when I was 3, because they were desperate. I was the firstborn son in the family, first grandson for them. No, sort of actually third grandson for them, actually. But they obviously hadn't met with me and stuff. So we went back to India, and I have got really very hazy, you know, as a 3-year-old, you're not going to exactly remember it, you know, perfectly. But, you know, I do have some memories of being there. But so we spent some time there. My granddad, grandma got time to spend with me. And the day before we were due to fly back, my dad tells me this story. In India, we are we come from a line of farmers, so we've got fields, and our religion and our sort of caste within Sikhism is called Jat, and Jat are traditionally sort of farm landowners.
Yeah, okay.
So that's where my dad grew up, working, you know, our land, the fields, and everything else and stuff. And the night before we were the night we were flying in the morning, my granddad and my dad would lie outside because it's so hot on the munja, which is like a straw sort of bed, and next to each other. And I think my granddad did say to my dad, I'm not feeling well, like I need to lie down and everything else. And so, you know, my dad, you know, sort of said, you know, try to look after him and get him wherever he needed and stuff. And I think basically we were flying back. I think this is right, and I hope I'm saying it right, but basically by the time we'd landed, my granddad had passed away.
Jeez.
Yeah. So
just through.
It was heart failure.
Oh man.
In the end. So which I never knew and never really appreciated or recognised at all, actually, until I was into my early 20s.
Yeah.
You know, so, and that's happened, that's directly in my life, you know, and maybe I'm sure I was told before along the way, but never really it never comprehended in my mind and stuff. But what, you know, so for my dad, you know, who had to leave his family, you know, and he was so close to his dad, you know, who he lost, you know, when he was only, 25, 26 years old.
Jeez.
You know, so
young to lose a parent.
And now later in life, I can appreciate what he must have had to go through and how hard that must have been for him. And, you know, I'm inspired more by him from knowing that. I'm inspired by him anyway. He's my biggest inspiration. But he, you know, him and my mum, you know, they had to knuckle down. You know, that's life. Whatever tragic circumstances you go through, you know, whatever, you know, whoever you're losing in your family and stuff, life doesn't stop and you have to keep going. And, you know, credit to them because, you know, they kept on going. And, you know, that we come from a line of immigrants that come to this country for a better life. And that's what it was all about. What we're going to do to kind of carve out a life for ourselves and our children. Yeah. And so, yeah, when we moved to Southampton, both of them worked at Ford's, and one would work days for 2 weeks and one would work nights for 2 weeks.
Jeez.
So they wouldn't see each other. They wouldn't see us.
Probably why they got such a strong relationship.
Yeah, probably, exactly. But, you know, Dad would walk in at whatever, 7:30 in the morning, literally have like 5 minutes with him and he'd want to go to bed because he's absolutely knackered. He's just been working the night shift. Mum will be off. Literally, it's like, you know, tag in, tag out kind of situation. So our grandma, my dad brought her over after my granddad passed away.
Okay, yeah.
So she lived with us from the age of kind of 6-7 years old. And she played a really big part in our upbringing, you know, and she was there to look after us, to give us what we needed, you know, feed us, make sure we're okay and stuff. And again, I haven't really appreciated how much of a role she had until later on in life.
Yeah.
But look, you know, upbringing was, you know, it was good, and you know, we there's a lot of love in our family, and the times that we did get a chance to spend to each other, we were, you know, we wanted that time together. You know, we didn't have much, you know, again, you know, more definitely working class, you know, in that sense. You know, my dad, you know, always says the story of coming over to the UK with, you know, a couple of quid in his pocket, and that's what he started with. And, you know, what he's been able to achieve and build up is...
Yeah, it's incredible, isn't it?
Incredible. Yeah, absolutely incredible. And it's an amazing thing. And that's the sort of person he is. And that's why he's such an inspirational person to me. And my mum's obviously been also an instrumental part in all of that, you know. But yeah, going to school. So I guess one of the things that people won't necessarily appreciate that know me and go through is that just that fact that I moved away from being amongst my family, my cousins, in a very a diverse area.
Yeah.
You know, there were a lot of Indians in the Midlands, in Derby, and classically there still are. Obviously, you know, you look at Leicester, you look at Birmingham, you look at Derby. There's a massive Indian population there. So, you know, that comfort, you know, of having family, life there. You know, I could speak Punjabi fluently, you know, and I've had tapes of myself speaking, and I can't quite believe it, you know, at a very young age, which did ultimately end up getting lost for a period of time.
Really?
Because you moved into Chandler's Ford.
Yeah.
You know, so, to be honest, I'm not sure I ever did see anyone like me for a long time. You know,
how did that, like? Can you remember how that felt as a child? Because I guess you know, I guess I've always lived in a similar area, and I guess I've never experienced that.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, it feels like it shouldn't be a problem. Like, it feels like it shouldn't really matter.
Yeah.
But I guess from your perspective, coming from a predominantly Indian area where you're surrounded by family and friends, and you know, all of a sudden you're in an area where actually culturally things are a lot different.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, you know, it definitely was, looking back, not easy, you know, which, you know, wouldn't have been apparent maybe to a lot of people. But, you know, it was difficult for a few reasons. You know, being somebody who's not white, in an area that is dominated by that population, and being young and at school, you know, whether it's a little bit unforgiving, it was quite difficult, actually, you know. As much as I, you know, like I say, I'm lucky to be with the kind of friends that I've got and the circle of people that I've got, but, you know, it still presented its own challenges, and unfortunately still does, you know, in this day and age as well. But one of the most difficult things was also not just, you know, the colour of my skin, but actually the culture that I belong to, and the religion and everything that goes with that. And, you know, having parents that, and particularly a dad, you know, who has been the centre, the bedrock of our family, you know, since we've been born, you know, and he's been the most influential. You know, both my mum and dad are both influential in their own ways, but my dad took the responsibility on of being, like I say that I want to do for my family, of providing, making sure that we were doing the right things and looked after and everything else. And my mum played a huge part of that as well, of course, but he was a decision maker. Yeah. You know, and it was hard for him. You know, it was hard for him because, you know, he's a 25, 26-year-old guy. You think back to what we were like at 25, 26, with the responsibility of children, you know, and going into his early 30s with 2 kids, lost his dad, got to make a living in a country he's never been a part of, really, and find his own way of, you know, achieving success. You know, like I say, that's why I just sort of look at him and I think, you're an amazing man for what you've done and created. But that also did transcend into our household, you know, and so, you know, going to school and living amongst people that were living life in a certain way and were allowed to do things and go places and stay out late and everything else, you know, I wasn't allowed to do any of that stuff, you know, and that was really hard because as a boy growing up, you just want to be around your mates. You want to do what they're doing. Like, you want to go after, you know, you want to go around their houses after school and go and play and, you know, play computer games or do whatever you're going to do and hang about and stuff. And yeah, look, you know, not saying we weren't definitely not allowed to do that. You know, actually we had a lot of freedom to do that, to go to the park up the other end of the road, Highfield Road, and spend time with the likes of CAC and others and stuff, to a certain point. But actually to do things like even little things that, you know, you kind of look back and you think it's silly, but like, you know, do a sleepover at your mate's house. We weren't allowed. I wasn't allowed. Why? My dad would say, we don't do that.
Why?
They just didn't. They just weren't trusting.
I see.
They just weren't trusting, and they said that it's not something that we do within our religion and culture.
Would you have been able to do that had you stayed in Derby?
Yeah, because it would have been with family.
Got you.
And, and any friends would have probably had some link to family.
Mm-hmm.
So, there is that element of, what they lost was the ability to kind of, almost kind of have your arms around this kind of group of people and have control, right? Have control. And as much as it felt like a very negative thing when I was growing up, I can appreciate it and respect it now as an older person, as an older human being, and I can understand some of the decisions that they took. Yeah. At the time, I didn't understand it, and I resented it, and it was really hard because it was, how am I going to sort of, going back into school and hearing people talk about what they did the night before and they were hanging around with each other, and I just wasn't involved at all, and that kind of longing to want to be there and be part of the group and, be part of the popular guys, and the fact that they could talk about it, and then you I don't think people intentionally try to do it with kind of a real motivation to do this, but you do end up finding yourself marginalized because you're not there, distanced, but I think what that meant for me was that I would spend much more time spending time with my brother, who I'm really close to, which I'm really I'm grateful to have that kind of relationship that I've got with Aaron and my brother, and I love him to bits. And but we did spend spending a lot of time together at home, and the times that we were sort of out of the house and stuff, we'd be seeing friends sometimes in the park, but it would be really going around seeing family at the weekends. My dad's aunts, my aunt, who hasn't had children of her own. So we would spend a lot of time with my aunt and uncle, who lived opposite Toynbee, and she still lives there in Osborne Drive. So it wasn't really hanging around with lots of other people our age and stuff. So that was difficult going in school every single day, not feeling like I can be part of the same group and have the same experience as other people were having. And I think, from a cultural perspective as well, really hard, because we were Indian, we were different. And, kids can be brutal. Yeah. So, and, that was impactful, on my life. There were times where, there was blatant racism, and that, we went through that, both me and Aaron went through.
At school?
Yeah, at school. At school, in society, at the park, it just happened.
Yeah. To be honest, I grew up with, when I was really young, I used to live in central Eastleigh, and my best friend growing up was an Asian lad.
Okay.
And, I mean, to me, he was just my best mate at the time. But I do distinctively remember some really unacceptable ways of him being treated, comments made towards him.
Yeah.
And, once that really sticks in my mind a lot was one of my parents' own guests, made a comment loudly.
Yeah.
And I just never looked at that guy in the same way, but it was way more accepted back then. And I know that sounds really like a really shit thing to say, but it just wasn't as unacceptable as it is now,
Yeah. And yeah, look, I agree with you in part. Funny enough, I do think we are and we have regressed as a society, and I worry about the world that we're in at the moment. Actually, and I worry for my kids. As sad as that is to say, but yeah, look, going back, it is a different day and age, and it was a different society, and there were definitely things that were very much accepted as a norm. Ultimately the influx of kind of the immigrants that came through in the 50s, 60s and 70s post Second World War, what that created, and the blatant racism that pretty much was not just on the streets but in the media and accepted, and it's hard to kind of break down those kind of views and the institutionalism of that because it's still going on now.
Yeah.
You know, and that just shows you, that's 40 years later, and we're still arguing about the same stuff. You know, we're still having to challenge people on some of their views and their attitudes and stuff that is, hundreds of years old. But I think growing up, what was difficult really was when you were a kid and you you come back home and you ask your mum and dad, you're like, why? Why is that happening to us? Why is that happening to me? Why am I treated differently to somebody else? Because you don't quite understand it. Obviously, you're not, you haven't formed, your maturity levels to get to a point where you can kind of question and answer and learn and read and everything that we can do now as adults. And it was difficult for them. And, they were very much, arms around us and kind of a look, we are who we are and we're proud of who we are. And you almost have to just let it go and just kind of accept it because that's what it is. Because they weren't in a position to do anything about it either, really,
It's shit, really.
But yeah, it's difficult. My dad tells me about being at Ford's, the amount of racism that he suffered.
Do you think it played any part in the way that you are now? Do you think it hardened you to things, or was it more of a negative impact that it ended up having on you?
I think there are negatives and positives around it. I mean, ultimately, it definitely has shaped the way that I am. 100%. Because what it made me do, I had to find my own way of coping with it, and because I wasn't gonna, my mum and dad, they just weren't, and they kind of admitted themselves they weren't in a position where they were going to go out and challenge, the dominant community that we lived in, on certain points and stuff. Don't get me wrong, I think I remember somebody shouted something like "Packy" at me in the park, and I can't remember the guy's name. He wasn't clearly not a friend, but someone that we know would hang around in the park, and he tripped over my younger brother, and I think he even kicked him when he was down as well. And I was really upset and I was crying, and my brother was obviously crying as well. So I took him back to the house and told my dad, and then my dad came out because the park was only up the other end of the road, and this guy was on his BMX and he was riding past just as my dad came, and he saw us and he obviously just legged it. Yeah. And my dad, at the time, my dad, what could he do? He's not going to run after that. Where does that take him? Ultimately, if you do that, and then the parents get involved and stuff. It's difficult. In some ways now I understand. At the time it was like, why can't you go and do that and kind of stand up for us? But he was standing up for us, but he just knew that he's not going to be faced with somebody that's going to be reasonable or is going to actually, is going to kind of acknowledge and accept the fact that they've done something wrong. Yeah. So you pick your battles, and that wasn't a battle worth picking. No.
One of the greatest sayings I've ever heard of is that, you shouldn't argue with idiots. Yeah. And that is kind of your dad's take on it, isn't it? He's kind of looking at that thinking, this guy's never going to see that he's doing wrong, so what's the point in me challenging that? Yeah. Which is still shit. But,
yeah. It's hard. It's hard. And you still get drawn in. You can get easily drawn in, because that's where some of the biggest arguments can happen, when you are talking or discussing something or arguing with someone. That it's not about having the same view as you, because that's not what it's about. But it's about having at least an opinion to understand both sides of an argument and appreciate both sides. Even if you still believe what you believe, if you can't appreciate the other side, the other person's side of the argument, then actually you're not prepared to be open. You're not prepared to kind of educate yourself. Yeah. Even though it may not change anything that you think going forward, but at least that opportunity to consider a different side of the argument or the opinion, I think is, I think that's always a challenge to find out whether somebody can do that or not. But I think, so going back to your original question, has it shaped me? Yeah, absolutely, because I had to find ways to sort of cope, and for me, for my own sake, to make myself feel better. And, the way I would do that, it makes me laugh, is, I would try to get ahead of the racism. I would make jokes. I would make jokes almost belittling my community and myself.
I remember.
Yeah,
I remember
ahead of knowing that it was going to happen.
So was that a defense mechanism?
Yeah, massively, because I just thought that if I can make people laugh and I can humor them, then I almost take away their ability to hurt me, and I protect myself by doing that.
I think it's a good strategy. Because
Yeah.
I mean, I'm probably blind to it, to be honest. But, you know, I remember growing up, I remember being at school, and I remember there not being a huge amount of kids there with Indian heritage.
Yeah.
But I do remember you being, it was almost like you were just accepting
the inevitable.
Yeah. And like it was an ongoing joke, and I was probably guilty of being involved in some of the joking that we had, but you know, I think from my perspective, like, you know me, I don't care
of course
where you're from and who you are.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, it was you know, like a fat joke almost.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think, and I do remember at school you just being really, it was kind of taken really well. I remember you being quite, you know, kind of like you say, kind of almost bringing it on yourself a little bit.
Yeah.
But I never realised that was the kind of defence mechanism.
Yeah.
I always just thought it was because you thought it was funny.
Yeah. Yeah. Look, absolutely. And look, of course, you know, at that age, you know, we're not, you know, we haven't got the same, like I say, the same level of intelligence and maturity that we've got now. And, you know, and like, I don't hold that against anyone at all, really, you know, growing up, because it is what it is. We're a product of the generation and the society that we're part of. And for me, it was about, the main thing that mattered to me, as sad as it is to say, is that I had friends.
Yeah.
That I could actually go to school and be around people that I wanted to be friends with.
Yeah.
That I was like, you know, whether they were popular or I just wanted to be part of the crowd, ultimately. I just wanted to fit in, really, when it comes down to it. And I just wanted people to like me. So I had to think about, how am I going to get people to like me? And that was the way of getting people to like me. You know, it was about almost embracing the racism. You know, as weird as that is to say.
It sounds awful, doesn't it?
Yeah, it is. You know, but it is awful. It is awful. But at the time, what it did was it allowed me the opportunity to for people to get to know me better. You know, to get to know me and understand who I was. And look, you know, like I said, I was never, you know, trebly hard, like being Indian, being fat, no doubt about it, because I was, and I was kind of, you know, bordering on obese at points, and short and hairy. So I wasn't I wasn't your perfect, you know, example of a popular person at school. So you have to. One thing it definitely has shaped me and given me the ability to do is to adapt. Adapt. You know, like I said, I had, you know, Andrew say it in his last podcast that, you know, be chameleon-like ultimately.
Yeah.
You know, be something to someone. And the difficulty with that is, you know, when you're younger, you accept losing part of who you really are to get that, because it matters to you so much.
Yeah.
You know, being in with friends, being in with those people that are popular. And, you know, part of that wave of like just, you know, my humour and sort of, like I say, you know, saying racist jokes or belittling myself and stuff, you know, it took the edge out of someone else saying it about me when I wasn't expecting it. So it didn't hurt me as much. But it kind of made people laugh. And then we moved on to different things. And it was, you know, and again, you kind of go, right, okay, God, great. Now I'm actually sitting here at the table with the guys and people want me to be here. And actually, they're now, they're saying, do you want to come round to the house? And do you want to go and play football in the park? And, oh, this is amazing. Like, this feels so good. I'm in there. I'm in there kind of thing.
Been accepted almost.
Yeah. But it is, still going back home and sort of when you are on your own and you kind of look and you kind of think about your day, you do feel hurt and it is upsetting. And, there are times where emotionally it's really, really difficult. And you got to find a way to cope to get through that. But, that was for a long time, I think I kind of kept that going, from starting at 7, 8, 9 years old, all the way through actually to probably into my teens, into my late teens, in fact. And part of me does regret, carrying it on for so long and almost kind of letting it be accepted. But at the same time, I'm not overly hard on myself because it's like, well, actually, I probably wasn't strong enough to go and take, a different position until a certain point in my life. Where I can stand up myself and I'm less worried about, being friends with someone or, being liked by them. That takes a long time.
Yeah, I remember, I think my memory of you at school was just, you were just a likeable lad.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, it was always, you were funny.
Yeah.
I think that's what I remember of you. You were just always cheerful.
Yeah. And I wanted to be.
Quite bubbly.
Yeah. And that's exactly what I wanted to be. And I didn't have anything else. So I wasn't good looking, I wasn't, like I said, I was different colour to everyone else. I had to be something to someone. Yeah. And, but, I'm not saying that was complete falsehood. I didn't create a persona and just lived and breathed it and then was completely different back. It was part of my character. It was part of my personality, a huge part of it. I love being around people and I love being, there and, being friends with people and, having the chance to kind of learn about people and for them to like me. And so having that kind of experience in life early on, actually, it has been a major contributor to my ability to be successful later in life. And it's funny, it was really aptly put, taking it to more recent times, I was invited to be part of a socio-economic diversity roundtable, which was a government-led initiative organised by the City of London Corporation, and it had very influential figures in the world of law firms and financial institutions there. I was the only recruiter or search agent invited, to be around this round table. And there was an Asian female lawyer there, and she spoke about the challenges of, diversity and being of an ethnic minority in the world of law and, in professional services and finance. And she said, I've had to really, throughout my entire career, if you look at someone who's resilient, you look at the ethnic minorities, because actually we have to be something to everyone. We have to be something that we're not a lot of the times. We have to put our different face on every single day, depending on who we're speaking to. For us, we can't just go in and be our authentic selves because it's not going to be, yes, there is a number of people now that will accept that and will embrace that, but there's a hell of a lot of people that won't still. And so, if you want to talk about, being adaptable, being chameleon-like, talk to people within our community. Yeah. Because we are that, and I really, hearing somebody else say that for the first time, it really resonated with me and it made me think about my own life. And it's true. It absolutely is true. Like, having to not just be able to rely on being the same as everyone else, does teach you skills, does make you act in certain ways, does make you think in different ways that do challenge you, that create different ways, different solutions. Yeah. Ultimately, which actually hasn't been a bad thing for my life and my career.
Do you think it's got any better since being a youngster? Do you think society's got any more accepting?
I think it definitely has. There has been some progress. Certainly in my group of friends and people that I know, you know, I can see the change in people, you know. There are still flashes, you know, that still happen, you know, that do still hurt, you know, especially when it comes from someone that you have got a lot of love for, respect for, etc. You know, when it catches you out pretty hard, you know, because it doesn't happen, maybe because it doesn't happen as frequently now.
So is that somebody saying something to you, or is that somebody acting in a way that you know? Do you know what I mean? Like, is it an act?
Yeah, both really. You know, in the way that you're treated, or things that are said to you, whether it's about you or it's about the people that part of the people that I am, you know, and it's still easy humor for people.
Right.
You know, it's still easy humor. You know, it is. I think it's that. I mean, that's what frustrates me the most, because it's so basic, right? You think, you know, it kind of does make me kind of laugh, because it's like, you know, because you can't think of anything else to say, you fall back on that. You know, you fall back on the colour of someone's skin or their culture. You know, when you can't say something about someone, what they look like or what they are, or, you know, their success and everything else. And, you know, it's cheap, it's easy, and actually, for me personally, that person's credibility is, you know, hugely diminished from the time that I hear or I see that kind of behaviour. I don't need to respect those people. I don't need to give them my time. Because, you know, I've got my own life, and I've got my own pathway set, and I'm not afraid of losing people, you know, and that was something that I was very afraid of growing up.
Yeah.
You know, and that has definitely changed in me. You know, I will make the right decisions for me and for my family and my life ahead, and I'll put that first. Whereas before I didn't. You know, where'd you
get to the point where, or are you already at the point where you're actively telling people that ain't funny, or that's not acceptable?
You know what? It's really hard still.
Yeah,
and you know, it's really hard, because it's a really difficult conversation. You know, if you're in a group, for example, and something gets said or something happens, to immediately change the atmosphere and the tone of that discussion is very hard. I'm not saying you shouldn't do it, and I'm still challenging myself a bit more to do it a bit more often, but it is really hard. You know, it is really hard, and I'm a thinker. I'm a deep thinker, and I'm an overthinker probably as well. You know, I try to look ahead of what the consequences of what I'm going to do are going to be. And again, like, as sad as this is to say, there have been instances where I've kind of just kept quiet, because I just think, you know, what I'm going to do is I'm going to change the tone of the atmosphere. You know, it's going to, all of a sudden, there's going to be a flashpoint. I'm going to have an argument or a conversation with someone that, you know, is a friend, you know, is someone that, you know, I care about. And look, for that person, I'm not saying that they're bad people and that they don't generally like me and care about me, but, you know, they've also got to get to a point in their lives and their thinking that they've got to understand that what I say and do isn't really acceptable. If I really care about Tarnj or anyone else in my group of friends, I am going to stop, you know, using cheap laughs, you know, when it's, you know, easily available to me. And look, it's really hard, because it's kind of something that's imprinted in you as a society as well. Like, it's hard for me, you know, like I say, like, I'm not, you know, I'm not sitting here saying I'm sort of all high and mighty about this, because I struggle with it myself. You know, like, we obviously, as Indians, we can be racist. You know, we can be racist within our culture. You know, as Indians, actually, you know, if you are of darker skin, you are made fun of.
Really?
Yeah. Because, and again, this must be something that goes back hundreds and hundreds of years before that, but, you know, to have light skin you know, and I know this, you know, from what I understand from speaking to my black friends, it's a big thing in their culture as well. Like, you know, if you're light skinned as a black man or woman, you know, if you're light skinned as an Indian man or woman, you're looked at more favorably.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah, which is really interesting. You know, I've had my own family take the piss out of me for being, so I'm only getting it on that side. I'm getting it on this side as well. And it's like, you, again, when you're growing up, you're like, oh my God, I'm just getting it everywhere. It's
really mad, isn't it? Because like, I can't, you know, for me as a white English person, like it's just never, you're aware of what happens, right? You see things going on.
Yeah.
You hear things that you find offensive and unacceptable.
Yeah.
You know that institutionally there's a lot of work to be done.
Yeah.
And that things, you know, the thinking, the subconscious thinking of people needs developing. But putting myself into your shoes and having that constant feeling of I'm different, what's this next person going to say? Am I going to enter this into a conversation where I'm going to feel uncomfortable?
Yeah. That's
got to be tough.
Yeah, it is really tough. You know, it is really tough. And you never feel quite settled, you know. And you know, I think when it comes, I don't want to labour on it too much because, you know, I want to talk about the positives as well about people and life and everything else. But I think it always hits you more when it comes from someone that you love and respect.
Yeah.
You know, that's when it hits you the most. From people that you don't know and don't really matter to you, or you know, are not really in your lives, or you've got actually no respect for. You know, when they say something, you kind of think, you know, of course they're going to say that.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm not here to. It's not my job to go around educating everyone. You know, it's you know, it's down to you as a human being as to what you choose to do for yourself. I'll definitely have a conversation, and I'll definitely be open to that conversation if someone's prepared to have a conversation with me about their views, their attitudes, why they say things, or why they think a certain way. I'm always there for that, 100%. And it may not change anything at the end of that conversation. And I can go into that conversation knowing that. That's not a problem. But at least having the conversation, I think, is a really positive thing. But I think, you know, the thing that now, you know, for me, I've never, you know, when I'm sitting around with people, I never think, you know, I don't go into a conversation and think, shit, I'm the only Indian here. I might do, to be fair, that's probably the wrong example to use. I would do if I was going into a conversation and there was a group of people and I am the only ethnic minority there. I would think, oh God, I am the only Indian here. The same way I would think if I was the only bloke in a, you know, in a table full of females. But it doesn't necessarily worry me when I'm in that situation. I just think, oh, actually, I've got a chance here to offer my view. And, you know, but, you know, at the end of the day, it's just about being respected for who you are and being treated the same as everyone else. That's what all it is. Yeah. There's nothing more or less than that. Yeah. You know, if you ask any person that's Indian, black, brown, or different to, you know, the white demographic, they don't want anything more other than just to be treated the same. Yeah. That is all it is. And I understand when you say, look, I can't really get in. I can't believe that people would act in that way. But you can't because you haven't been through it.
Yeah, you're right. 100%.
And that's not your fault. You shouldn't have to worry about it because you're not going through it. But for, you know, it's easy, you know, and again, I'm not saying this in any derogatory way or anything either. It's easy if you're white. Because you don't have to think about things like that. You know, that's one thing you know you're not going to be picked apart on.
True. And that's why I asked you the question, do you think it's getting better? Because my mind, in my view, things have taken a step forward because things that were said when I was a kid are no longer acceptable. People are being called out for that stuff now, whereas before it was just, you know, almost not necessarily expected, but it wasn't unusual for people to think and say those things. Whereas now it's way less accepted, and I would call people out on it. But then,
absolutely.
But then that doesn't, you know, it doesn't take away the kind of institutional racism, the part that's subconscious, I guess.
Yeah, look, you can't, this is it's going to be a big marathon, not a sprint. You know, this will go on beyond our lifetimes and probably our kids' lifetimes and theirs. It's going to take a lot to change. And so to answer your question, I do think definitely things have changed and improved, 100%, absolutely, compared to what it was like when I was growing up. And even in my teens and stuff, there's definitely been marked improvements, and it's safer and it's better. And, and for my kids, that's my biggest concern is I don't want them to have to go through what I have gone through in my life, or my parents have had to go through as well. And, there's things that we kind of set up in a way that hopefully protects them from that. But I think the fear I've got about the world we're in at the moment, and why I feel like there is a danger of it going backwards, is that, if you look at the politics, of the world and our country, and how that has so drastically changed in the last 8-9 years in the States and here, and, what now has become, popular politics, it's having a very big impact and influence on society. You can just look at the way that our current government is approaching immigration, for example, and, there are very much elements and shades of fascism, right, really right-wing approach, segregation, marginalisation, all in the favour of winning votes and all in the favour of, staying in power. And it's having a really damaging effect on society, and it is creating divide, and it is spilling out. You can see it in certain sectors. You can see it in certain areas, football, for example, which I know we both absolutely love. It's a passion for us, and, we'd spend a lot of our time, I expect, sitting down watching games and playing, and if we still can. But look at what's going on in football grounds, in like the major football teams and stuff, and it doesn't seem to be changing. There doesn't seem to be a consistent change, and in fact, in my view, it's definitely regressed. And I've seen it. I'm a season ticket holder at Arsenal. I go to the games. I'm not saying of people around me, but I've been at Emirates Stadium, and I've been with another one of our good friends, Craig, who I'm seeing tomorrow and going to the Arsenal-Liverpool game with. And actually, I remember, how many years ago was it? 7 or 8 years ago. So we are going back a few years compared to where we are now. But we were sat, our original season ticket, we were sat in the corner, and we had a group of guys in front of us that we, didn't really talk to and stuff. But considering Arsenal at that time probably had more ethnic minority players in their team than they did have white players, there was a bunch of guys in front of us that sat there when we played Chelsea, I think it was, and that were calling Sean Wright-Phillips a monkey, and were like saying you need to go and eat a banana and things like this. And, I, based on what I've told you today, was sitting there sort of thinking, well, I'm probably not going to say anything here. But Craig could not accept it. And credit to him, he's the one that we knew we weren't going to get into a position of having a sensible conversation with these guys at that point in time. But credit to him, he went ahead and complained to Arsenal and reported these guys. And 2 of these guys were banned.
Good.
And we were moved. So, and that for me, I love Craig to bits. He's definitely someone that I say is, again, another person that's one of my best friends and like a brother to me. But, him doing that without being asked by me to do anything, and him just doing that off his own back meant so much more to, meant more to me than he'll probably know. But that was like, wow, like, fair play to you. You've done something. You've stood up. You've taken a bit of action.
Yeah.
And you've said, I'm not going to accept this. And that for me, if I love and respect him anyway, but I love him and respect him even more.
Yeah.
For the fact that he's prepared to do that. And I think that's what it is. It's just about those small things that can happen where there's evidence, there's action rather than just the words around it. that show that actually, you know, we do mean this. So look, you know, fingers crossed that things do improve. I'm definitely very passionate and focused about it, improving it in the legal industry and doing things as part of my business and in our industry to help businesses improve, etc., and talk about it. But I think we've got a long way to go.
Yeah, I think it's definitely something that needs some work, but you know, fingers crossed, like you say, that things improve over time. So, all right, so got through school and then into uni to study law. I take it.
Yeah.
So where did you go? Because you moved away, didn't you?
I did, yeah. So I went to Nottingham Trent University.
Yeah, okay.
So actually, for me, it was a great opportunity because it was, you know, that age when you're 18. You know, I was always happy to go and do different things and go to different places and stuff, and always wanted to do it. I had that kind of desire to go and try and learn and be part of new environments and stuff. And actually going to Nottingham brought me closer to my closest family, like who lived Derby, so you know, 15-20 minutes away. So I'd quite often spend weekends in Derby actually when I was at Nottingham Trent Uni, being with my uncle and aunts, my cousins and stuff. So it was an amazing opportunity for me in that sense. But yeah, before that, finishing school, going to college, went to Barton Peveril, and I did law A level as well as history and psychology, and so when I was going to college, the interest in law came about because one of my closest cousins from Derby, he was, you know, I looked up to, 10 years older than me, had gone to uni and had qualified to become a barrister. Mm-hmm. And so he was down in Bournemouth uni, actually. So he would spend a lot of time with us in our house in Southampton, you know, on the weekends and stuff. Yeah. So, and it was good to sort of speak to him, and I was very sort of idolised him and, you know, wanted to be quite like him and stuff. So that played a big influence in my kind of thoughts around law. But actually, you know, I didn't really want to be a lawyer to begin with, and I didn't think that's where I was going to go. I actually wanted to go into drama and, really? But, you know, performance arts. And I remember having this conversation. It makes me laugh now because it was upsetting at the time, but it definitely makes me laugh now. But I remember saying to my dad, so I did GCSEs, the only A I came out in was in drama.
Right.
So I was like, this is great. You know, I've got an A in drama. This is going to be my chance to push myself forward and do it. And I wanted to do performance arts at college. And I remember having a conversation with my dad, and he was like, you know, what are you thinking? And I was thinking, I'm going to go and do performance arts. And he's like, no, you're not. And I was like, but why? You know, because I've just got an A in drama. Like, you know, that's my strongest subject. And he was like, Tarnjeet. He was like, do you see any Indians on EastEnders? And I was like, no. He was like, do you see any Indians on any of the soaps that we watch? You know, we grew up on the soaps, EastEnders, Corrie and all that. I was like, no. And he was like, well, that's the reason why you're not going to go and do drama. He was like, you need to do something solid. You know, you've got some good grades, well, good enough grades to go into college. You know, you should focus on the classic, you know, careers. Yeah. Lawyer, doctor, probably the two most prominent careers, you know, particularly amongst the South Asian community, or accountancy. You know, so it was not, you know, my choice was very limited ultimately in the end. And the funny thing was, 3 weeks later, after I'd applied and got into college, bloody EastEnders had their first ever Indian family come on. And I was like, this is a joke. Oh, no way. But, you know, I accepted it because, you know, that was my dad, and I respected him, and I had to respect him. Even if I didn't want to do what he was telling me to do, I did it. So, yeah, I went into college. I actually really enjoyed law, the law A-level. But then again, I didn't want to do law because I loved history, and I wanted to go and do a history degree. Similar conversation at home. That was not going to happen, so I did a law degree. So, yeah, and it was actually quite interesting. So at college, again, I wasn't massively a studious student. I still wanted to, again, still yearning to be, you know, belong to the popular group and be amongst people. That was a point when we're like, you know, I know it already started happening at school. Perhaps I shouldn't say this on a podcast, but, you know, drinking, starting to get into going out, you know, going out with your mates, drinking, having fun. And that's what life was all about and stuff. And I wanted a piece of that, really. And so I was sort of given chances to start doing that. And I was very distracted by that, to be honest. That's what kind of I woke up thinking about, rather than thinking, oh, I'm going to go into do my A-level law class today, etc. But you know, I'm fortunate in the sense that I've been able to kind of get myself through, and when I need to turn up, I can turn up. And so I was predicted, I think, something like a CCD at A-level, and I came out with an ABD. So one was bang on, psychology in the end, actually, which is kind of ironic given that's what I spent a lot of my time kind of focused on in my career. But it was very statistics based, numbers based, and I just couldn't do it. It was something I couldn't switch on to be able to kind of understand and apply myself in that with law and history. I did. So I went to Nottingham Trent University. It was the only university I got into. I did apply to Southampton, some better universities, but it was the only one that I got in because when you do the application process, they actually base it a lot on what your predicted grades are.
Got you.
So even though I'd come out with better grades, the choice that I had, unless I decided to take a risk and go again in the clearing process for a better university. But I was happy going to Trent. My cousin was there. One of my closest cousins was at that uni doing a law degree in the year above me. I was going to be close to my family. So, went off and did a law degree. And I mean, that's where probably the biggest change of my life happened, you know, in the sense that the person I was before I went to university, I came out of university probably, you know, a lot of people would say a completely different person, unrecognizable in some ways, right? You know, from a physical perspective, you know, that was a massive thing for me because going to university brought out its own opportunities, but it also its own challenges. And, you know, that's a point in life when we're in our teens, you know, we wanna be going out, we want to be getting into relationships, you know, we want to be liked, we want to be, you know, attracted to the opposite sex and everything else. And I certainly wasn't that, you know, when I went to university. And so, you know, that was one of the big things, living in a house with 5 or 6 other strangers that you've never met before in your life. And all of a sudden you're thrust into this environment where you're living with each other day in, day out. And it was an amazing experience, you know, like, you know, I'm grateful because those people I'm still very close to, actually, a lot of those people, and friends with, you know, they've become friends for life as well. Yeah. But that experience of going to university was quite defining for me, I'd say, because I was able to find myself again, actually, during that period of time, as kind of, again, very cliche to say, but I was back in an environment where it wasn't just a purely, you know, dominated demographic by just one, you know, population. Nottingham is a very kind of diverse, you know, city and county. So there's a lot more people that look like me there, you know, and a lot more Indians and South Asians there. A lot more people from different parts of the country as well. You know, that really gave me some proper exposure. So when we're in Southampton, Chandler's Ford, you know, kicking about in Eastleigh and, you know, we only know what we know there. You know, that's what life is. And we're not supposed to, well, you know, it's hard to understand what life is outside. Going to university and being in a house with people from Sheffield, from like London, which was just felt like a completely different country in a lot of ways, you know, the things that they were talking about and their experiences and stuff. But that was pretty incredible, you know, it gave me a chance, a taste to really understand what certainly our country was like and what the world was more like. And yeah, that first year for me was quite a pivotal year because I really missed home. You know, I really missed my mum and dad, and I missed my brother because, you know, there's, you know, because I love them to bits, and the safety of home as well. I missed, certainly in that first, term that I went there. I remember actually crying in my room on the first day when my parents left. Jeez. Like, yeah, it hit me all in one go. Like, as much as I wanted it, it's tough. Yeah. I wanted it, but I was really scared as well at the same time. And, but, you know, then people come along and, you know, you've got to kind of then turn it back on again a little bit, you know, to get people to like you and everything else. You're back into that zone again. But it was great, and quickly, you know, I was fine and happy to be there and stuff. But then I had to go and work on myself as well, because I was like, right, I've got to get into my degree. You know, I'm going to, you know, obviously turn up, and yeah, degree is fun. You know, there's a lot of learning, but there's obviously a lot of, you know, going out, getting drunk. Yeah. You know, which was happening all of the time. Uni. Yeah, I mean, that's uni life. You know, that's what a lot of people do go to uni for. Just that. opportunity to go out and be socializing and everything else. But for me, then it was like, right, I'm at uni now. I've got all these people here. You know, I think I've got a kind of a bit of a formula of being liked, so in which I've worked on, and I can, you know, be well liked. But how am I going to actually now find someone to like me, like in and for having a girlfriend or anything like that? And I just, I think, I don't know what happened, but I think I just woke up one day and I was like, well, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to change my appearance. I'm going to really commit to it. And so I think, long story short, I went from being 14 and a half stone at 18 and a half, and I dropped 5 stone to 9.5 stone. I went down to, all in the space of 5 months.
Bloody hell.
Yeah, so that's pretty much a stone a month.
And you kept it off as well, pretty much.
I did during uni, actually. You know, harder these days to do it, obviously, as I'm sure we both know. But it was, you know, it was a transformational experience for me, because I could start, when I started seeing the results, it was like a drug. I was addicted to it. You know, I was in that gym every day. I was eating next to nothing. Like, I'd have like a cereal bar in the morning. I'd be in the gym for like an hour and a half. I'd go to a lecture. I would eat like a plain chicken breast, which, you know, was cheap and, you know, loads of protein with a bit of salad. And then I'd have cereal for dinner. And that was literally what I would do day in, day out, every day for like whatever, X amount of months. And even drinking, I stopped drinking beer for a bit, because I was like, that's going to put on calories. I'm going to drink WKDs and Smirnoff Ices instead when I go out. And, you know, which is obviously probably even more calorific, as we know now, right? And full of like sugar and everything else. But I did those things, and that quickly changed. And then for me, all of a sudden, a new world was opened up where I was skinny. You know, I started becoming a little bit more attractive to the opposite sex, and I wanted to obviously explore that. And it just, you know, it created a different opportunity for me that I'd never had before. Yeah. To get into different groups, to experience, you know, new things that I'd never had before in my life. And so, yeah, from the restrictions of life before university, I was now like, you know, away. Yeah, in a playground, really, essentially, like, you know, with an opportunity to do the things that I'd been longing for a long, long time and stuff. So, and I went too far the other way, I'd probably say, as, you know, which is kind of classic, right? You know, when you feel like you're limited, you're restricted in things you can do, can't go to sleepovers, can't hang out with your friends, got to be in at a certain point, everything, and all of a sudden you're thrust into this environment where you've got complete independence. You know, my dad's not there telling me what I can do and what I can't do. And so I took absolute liberties, you know. But, you know, at the end of the day, I still had to knuckle down when I knew I had to knuckle down, because I still had that fear. You know, what I knew I couldn't do is go home with shit grades and not having passed. Yeah. You know, I still had that fear. I still had that underneath me. And to be honest, I was still quite curious about, you know, wanting to do well. And I was a bit of a geek still. You know, I still quite like learning. Yeah. So
then you how do you go from doing a law degree, and I'm interested to understand the conversation with your parents as well on, you know, going down a law career, becoming a solicitor. Yeah. To then being put into a position where you're starting up your own recruitment company.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's been a bit of a sort of wild journey in a lot of ways, and lots of twists and turns. That's where I've ended up now. But having kind of gone to my degree, got into law school, you know, it was the best law school in the country that I managed to slip my way in, having done my application the day before it was due, because I was toying between being a barrister or a solicitor. Yeah. And my cousin basically said, go down the solicitor route, it's much more certain and everything else. I put my application in, got the grades to get me in, and I was amongst the elite. Like, these guys at law school had come from Oxford, Cambridge, the best Russell Group universities. There was only 2 other people from Trent that had got into Nottingham Law School. Blimey. And both had come out with a first class degree, and I had come out with a 2-1 and a low 2-1. So just about scraped my 2-1, being totally honest. So I was kind of like, felt like, you know, imposter syndrome, like, shit, I'm here now amongst all these people. They all had a training contract. So the route to becoming a solicitor is that and I didn't know any of this, by the way, completely naive to it. And I quickly kind of realised that I'd missed a trick at university. Yeah. But, you know, the route normally is that you go to uni and in your second year, you start making applications for a training contract at law firms. And then you go through a recruitment process and an assessment process. And then by the third year, you've landed your training contract. So you know that you just got to get the grades at degree. You've got to go to law school, get the grades there. And then your job's guaranteed. Mm-hmm. I didn't have any of that.
Oh, okay.
So I got to law school and I was about 3 years behind everyone else there in terms of what they had done.
Yeah.
So I got to law school. I came up with a good grade in law school, and that was great. But I didn't have a training contract, and I was making a few applications. And again, being totally honest, and not my parents would want to hear this, but I was still massively distracted by going out.
Yeah.
Going out, socialising. I was part of the law school football team. I'd been part of the uni football team as well when I was there. Still loved that. That was still my passion. So I didn't really take it as seriously as I probably should have done. And then, so I came out of law school with no training contract and I came back to Southampton. For 6 months, I did a variety of different jobs. Basically, I had to figure out what I was going to do. And in that time, my dad was like, well, you're not sitting around, you're going to work. So I was like, okay. So I shrank wrap pallets for a bit in a warehouse, did that for about 2 months, worked at a double glazing sales company, Zenith Windows in Portswood. Yeah. Did cold calling, awful, hated it. Funny that, because that's what's kind of, that's my world now as well. Yeah. And I did a few different things. My mum had got me a job at Norwich Union at Viva over the summers when I'd come back. So I did a bit of a stint there as well. And then I became a resourcer for a bit, I think that summer maybe at Match Tech, where our friend Badders, Mark Badley, worked, and Andrew Cat worked there as well. And that was a bit of a taste of recruitment. Kind of a bit formative a little bit for future. But then my dad, basically his solicitor, so, the way that my dad, tried to build a life for us was knowing that he wasn't going to give us what we needed and what he wanted to give us just by working at Ford's. He with an entrepreneurial mindset, he invested in property and, having student-let properties, etc. And that's the way, he kind of built and accumulated his wealth and basically put us through uni. I mean, like the cost of university and law school, I'm so grateful and so lucky to be in the position that I was actually even able to go because there were massive costs and I didn't have any money to do that myself and I didn't get any grants. There was like no loans available. I took a student loan at university, which I had to pay off when working, but my parents funded me throughout all of that experience,
Blimey.
And that, I look back at that now and I think about the money they must have invested in me.
Yeah, it's mad, isn't it?
It's absolutely nuts. But they worked their absolute arses off to do that for me. And I'm so grateful. I'm so, proud of them for doing that and giving that to me. Eternally be grateful to them for that. But then from that point onwards, then, I got a paralegal job basically at a high street firm called Paulson's in Botley.
Oh, yeah.
And they only took me on as a paralegal on 10 grand a year at the time. And I managed to convince them to give me a training contract. They weren't registered to give us a training contract. So I had to do the application process to get them registered to give me a training contract. Then I got my training contract. Then I qualified. And then the firm merged. And I stayed there for about a year and a half. And had some of the best times and best experiences there. Amazing. And that's a different story in itself. But I moved to a bigger firm called Moore Blatch, now called Moore Barlow.
Yeah.
Into their commercial real estate team there. And I think I was there for about a year and a half. And so the change from law to recruitment, it was probably quite forced in the end because as much as I did enjoy certain elements of being a lawyer, there were elements that I just really didn't enjoy. And look, in through all of that, by the way, I'd got married. So shouldn't forget that massive event in my life. So I'd met Savita post law school when I was back in Southampton, and we'd actually gone to the same university, but we didn't really know each other.
Blimey.
We'd only met each other once or twice in our last year. And then, serendipitously, we were both at a mutual friend's birthday party a couple of years later, hit it off. I pursued Savita for a long period of time. Chased her, and she definitely deserved chasing. We fell in love, long distance relationship for 2 years, and made it work. Had to hide that from our parents, had to live a life and everything else. And find opportunities to be together when we could, and then convinced our parents as well, which we had to do, which is a different probably story for another day for a different podcast. But eventually, got their blessing to get married. We got married in 2007. And I had just qualified as well as a lawyer just before in May. So qualified in May, got married in August, and then Savita moved in with us in my house in Valley Park by the time we were there. Went to being a lawyer, joined More Blatch, and actually I quickly realised that I won't make it. I won't make it in the long term here. Even though I had certain attributes, I think that I was good at certain elements. I was brilliant with clients. I think the firm were very keen to quickly put me in front of some key clients, which I really appreciated, and I was good. But actually at the lawyering and doing that day in, day out, I wasn't the best. I just didn't have the focus and the attention for it, and maybe the intellect as well. So in the end, it was probably it was a mutually agreeable decision that that I probably should leave certainly the firm. And at that time, my brother had gone into recruitment. People that we know, like Andrew and Badders, had gone into recruitment. I actually saw both. Funny enough, I actually went to Mark, because I know Mark had gone into recruitment first, and I sought his counsel. And quickly I decided that actually, do you know what, I'm going to give this a go.
Brilliant.
And so the recruiter that had placed me at the law firm that I was at last, she said, look, we've got an opening in London, do you want me to put you forward for it? And I said, yeah, why not? Let's give it a go. So I went up and interviewed at a company called Hudson, joined them after successfully interviewing. And then I commuted for 8 months from Southampton to London every single day, which was tough. Sort of 5, not too different to what I do now, to be honest, like getting up at 5:30, getting on the train, getting home at 8:39, still getting in a run with Craig like a couple of times a week. It wasn't really, it was a means to an end, but I quickly realised I was actually quite okay at recruitment. I did well. I broke sales records in my first 3 months in my team. I went on to achieve quite quick success, and we moved then we moved from Southampton to London, me and Savita, in Feb 2011. So I came into recruitment in June 2010, and I was like, I think that this is going to work. So let's just go for it. Timing was great because Andrew and Zoe were moving to Australia. We'd been up and stayed with them a few times and stayed at their apartment and stuff. And we were looking, and they were like, why don't you go and speak to the landlord and see whether you can take it on? So we didn't have to go for an agent.
Perfect.
It was like, it was perfect. It was perfect. And so that worked out really well. And it gave us a chance, Savita and I, to actually have a place of our own for the first time in our lives, live together, live in London and have a life together. Thankfully kind of haven't, had to kind of look back from that point onwards. And it's been, massive journey, really. I kind of moved to a separate business within a year, joining somebody else that had left my team, the most successful person in the entire business. He was like, you should come over because this is a place where we can do even more. Went over with him, quickly did do quite a lot. Again, I was promoted successively year after year, made a director of that business. Quite early doors, ran a team of 10 that was turning over 2 million, was billing myself, was always a top biller, always wanted to be a top biller. And then kind of moved into a separate business to do more senior stuff, broke their sales record in my first year there. And then that was where at the point, there's a lot in between. My son was born in 2014, and I'm rushing it through because I'm also conscious that we've only got limited time and stuff. But in the end, I set up my business in 2018. And I did it. So one of our good friends, Mark, as I mentioned, best friend, he always said along the way that if you ever do anything, I want to be a part of it. And he stuck to his word. And, he was has been really important for me from a life perspective and business perspective, and his support and his investment. I did that in 2018, and we're here now, 6 years old.
6 years in the making.
6 years.
It's all going swimmingly well still, and
I wouldn't say necessarily. Swimmingly. I mean, look, definitely, ups and downs. We've had COVID, in the middle of that. Markets obviously have been tough. We're in a period now where there's, a lot of people are struggling in life and in society because of cost of living, inflation, and everything else and stuff. But London is its own sort of microclimate and bubble and stuff. And I'm lucky that I'm in the industry that I'm in, because you always need a lawyer. And city law and top lawyers, these businesses are huge, global, resilient businesses. The best, they're the best of the bunch. They turn over billions of pounds. And I'm lucky enough to be in that world and work with really, really influential, really high quality, highly intelligent people that are at the top of their game and play a part in their lives and helping them shape their careers, which I absolutely love. And the business, is kind of stood up, to the challenges. There's been really tough times. There's been some really brilliant times and amazing times. And hopefully there's going to be more of those going forward and less of the tough times. But it's definitely taught me a lot. A lot of self-discovery, I think, in these last 6 years about who I really am and who I really want to be. A lot of learning, a lot of looking back and regretful of mistakes that I've made and what I've done to other people around me, for my own selfishness and my own ego. But a desire really to want to change that and not put myself first. And I'm more than prepared to put myself last now. What matters to me is always going to be my wife, Savita, my 2 kids, my mum and dad, my brother, my other mum and dad, because I call them mum and dad, Savita's mum and dad, my brother-in-law, my family and my closest, my nearest and dearest, really. That's what matters to me. That's who I care about. That's who I want to have a positive impact on. And that's what I'm driven by.
Sounds like, it sounds like you've, created this kind of success that you were talking about right at the very start of the podcast. So, mate, massive congratulations to you. It's Thanks, mate. I can tell it's been an incredible journey.
That means a lot.
Quick fire questions.
Yes.
We'll just rattle through these.
We have.
We've spoken for way longer than I thought.
We probably needed about 6 hours, didn't we?
Yeah, we probably should have done it. But it has been, mate. It's been such a great conversation. So we'll have to pick it up and go again at some point.
Up, mate. I'm grateful.
3 things that have got you to where you are today.
Resilience, I think, is probably number Massive. 1. Just having to kind of really take control of what life is going to be and what I want it to be, and just not, at times where you've had to feel like you need other people to do that for you, and actually, you kind of make excuses for yourself that, that person's not giving me this opportunity and that person's not supporting me, and why aren't they doing that? That thinking has played a big part, in my psyche for a long time, and in more recent years I've tried to change that, take control, think about what you can do, control the controllables.
Yep. 100%.
And make those marginal gains, and you've got to do that. You've got to look at the long term and be long term. Don't worry about the short term. Think long term, and the short term will take care of itself. Do the right things. That's probably one. That's probably been one key thing. My dad, as a person, as a major factor, is really my source of inspiration. Like, what he has gone through, what he has done for us, what he has achieved in life for us, what he's been able to put, he's had 2 sons, both I would, have done okay and done fairly well, which I think, he is very proud of, and he should be, because he's the making of us. We are nothing without him and my mum. So yeah, he is probably the single biggest factor, actually, I would say, for my success, because watching him, learning from him, listening to him, not always, but, you know, do it more now than I ever used to, you know, and how much love he has given me.
It's powerful, isn't it?
It's
so
amazing.
Powerful.
You know, that's one thing that has been an absolute consistent in my life. You know, your parents' love, you know,
Amazing.
No matter who comes and goes in your life,
they're always there.
There's nothing like it.
No,
and
as parents ourselves as well, it's good to kind of pass that on as well, right?
It really is, and you really understand what it is to be that love, you know, compared to, you know, the other really important love in our lives, like our wives, you know, and our family. But that love, you know, is a very special, unique type of love.
Yeah.
And I'm really grateful, and I, you know, and I wouldn't be anything without him.
No.
That's what it's second factor. Third factor, ability to adapt.
Yeah.
I think
the chameleon effect.
Yeah, I think so. I think just when things go wrong, it's easy to, you know, fall down and be down and you get dragged down quickly. But to embrace, you know, a different perspective, a different outlook, you know, be open to that and then find ways to adapt is a really powerful thing, because it's linked to the resilience and the control part. You are taking back control.
Yeah.
You know, rather than just accepting something and thinking, right, that I'm never going to be able to change that, or I'm never going to get in there because of the type of person I am or the personality I've got. Find ways in, you know, if you can. If you can't, try a different avenue, try a different person or a client. You know, you don't have to just hang your hat on one thing. You can be versatile. In fact, it's actually a strength if you are.
Perfect. Yeah, 100% agree. 100%
That's probably the third thing I'd say.
Cool. Last question.
Yeah.
What's next? Where are you going next on your journey?
Look, hopefully, grow the business, and create, you know, like I say, a successful brand, a successful business. Continue to do what I'm doing now and doing well. Improve upon that. You know, create a culture in my business and a team and something that I can call my own and be proud of. I'm really driven by that. But like I said, the main thing, what the future holds, is about giving absolutely everything I can to my kids, to my wife, to people that love me, that deserve it, to be honest. You know, I'm in service of them, you know, and that is fundamental to my beliefs as a Sikh. You know, we believe in seva, and seva is service. And that's what I do. I say my prayers every single morning, and the first people that sort of names out of my lips are my wife, my kids, my parents, and my closest, you know, and I put myself last, and I'm happy with that. That for me gives me a sense of sort of being, you know, I can feel like I've got something, a purpose to drive on for, and so for the moment, that's what I'm focused on, mate.
Amazing.
And building that out.
Well, best of luck to you.
Thank you, mate.
Where can people go to find out more about you and your company? I know you said you might have a podcast coming up soon, so that'd be really cool.
Yeah, that is the hope. I'm going to take inspiration from you, my friend.
Yes.
So my business is called Latitude Legal Recruitment. I've got a website. I am going to be a bit more active on LinkedIn, you know, in these coming months, and taking forward a bit of a strategy on that front, and taking inspiration from people like Andrew, who's done incredible things on that platform. So I need to tap him up. And yeah, that's probably the you know, the easiest ways of getting a hold of us. Just keeping an eye on LinkedIn, going on the website, come and speak to me. Always want a conversation with people that know me, don't know me. And if I can help you in any way, whether you're in my industry or not, you know, I will always try to help, you know, and that's, so, you know, if you need any advice on career or CVs or anything like that, whatever job or industry you're in, please drop me a line, pick up the phone. I'll be happy to help if I can.
Perfect, mate. Thank you so much. It's been
thank you, mate.
It's been a long conversation, but it feels like it could have gone on for so much longer.
Thanks for bearing with me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no, not at all. Next time we'll book more studio time.
Absolutely,
and we'll make sure we get right into it, because it's genuinely been inspirational. incredibly kind of motivational, but really interesting at the same time. So I really appreciate you coming down.
Thanks, mate. I appreciate you. I'm really grateful. Thanks very much, mate.
Cheers, mate. Nice one.